Hi everyone, welcome to Torah on Demand. I'm Rabbi Yael Ridberg. Usually by the time we get to the Sabbath before Passover, called Shabbat Hagadol, the Great Sabbath, we may have already spent many hours scouring our kitchens, turning them over, removing chametz, and anticipating ourselves having come forth from Egypt. It's one of the most evocative directives of the holiday to feel ourselves being lifted out of degradation and despair towards dignity and rededication. How is this year different from all other years? Let me count the ways. Our joy is most certainly tempered knowing that not all Jews are free in body or in spirit. There are still 130 families with an empty seat at the Seder table because their loved ones are still held in Gaza. There are more than 1,400 families who are grieving the losses of October 7th. The war against Hamas continues with ongoing destruction and death in Gaza. There is violence on the West Bank. Israel is on high alert in the aftermath of the unprecedented missile barrage from Iran, and of course, continuing anti-Semitism all over the world. When we remove the drops of wine from our cups at the Seder, recalling the 10 plagues of Egypt, they will be laden with the heaviness of the plagues of our day over the last 6 months. It's not clear why Shabbat Hagadol was given this name, but commentators associate one of the concluding verses of the Haftarah for this Shabbat taken from the prophet Malachi. The verse reads, "I will send the prophet Elijah before the coming of the Gadol, an awesome day of God." The prophets of old were dedicated to exposing societal hypocrisy and promoting ethical and spiritual frameworks for living. They preached purpose-driven rituals, that God wanted compassion for the weak and the stranger, and that the exodus from Egypt envisions an audacious dream to counter oppression with liberation and redemption. Malachi, the last of 12 minor prophets, preached against the egregious sins of idolatry and the mistreatment of the vulnerable in society. His very name means my angel or my messenger, and his message of reconciliation isn't just the concluding message of the book in his name, but of all of the books of the prophets. The Haftarah imagines that the people have turned away from God and yet wonder how they might face God again. Malachi reminds them that if the people turn back towards God, God will return and turn back to them, which we understand to be really the essence of redemption. When relationships are strained, it isn't so clear that what redemptive power could look like. The prophet Elijah offered that redemption is when Heshiv lev avot al banim velev banim al avotam, that when it is the heart of the parents that turn toward the children and the heart of the children that turn toward the parents. There's something so basic about this idea, although it's certainly not a perfect recipe for every family where interpersonal conflict has led to rancor and resentment, or even estrangement. And it is certainly no panacea between countries who are at war. But a human heart turning toward another isn't some trite idea found only in a Hallmark card, because without turning, nothing further is even possible. We need this message this year because we can't always depend on the miracle of a sea parting in front of us on our way out of the narrow straits. The heart must be open and already turning toward redemption to believe that the possibility of covenantal relationship and peace is even attainable. The sages held that when Elijah comes, the peace that will be achieved won't simply be a cessation of war, but rather the well-being of society. The sages offered that redemptive vision in the final verses of Malachi, preceded by the presence of Elijah, is what will precede the Messianic age. Redemption, therefore, is both a supernatural occurrence, as imagined in the Torah, and a tale that includes human dignity, courage, and basic decency. It is, as Rabbi David Hartman taught in the name of Rabbi Mordechai Kaplan, may both of their memory be for a blessing, an individual's growth into a complete human being, a person who fulfills all of his or her aptitudes, is redemption that is not an abstract principle or theological construct, but a fine-tuning of the human soul that helps us to love more and to be more sensitive. It creates a meaningful pattern of self-fulfillment. So this year's retelling of redemption will feel different than previous years, to be sure, but the story is the same at its core. Elijah's cup on our Seder table will once again remind us that redemption is always potentially close at hand. How will we celebrate a holiday of freedom with hostages still in captivity? How do we call for all who are hungry to come and eat when so many Israelis are not at their own Seder tables and millions of Palestinians are on the brink of famine? When we remember that the pain of suffering and loss can lead to rebirth, then perhaps the open door for Elijah at the Seder isn't magical thinking, but rather an expression of faith in the future. Malachi speaks not of hearts turning in the plural, but a single heart that in motion connects each of us and all of us in the service of redemption. On this Shabbat Hagadol, this great Sabbath before the retelling of our history and the transformative power that we have inherited for redemption, what part of your heart might turn to bring all of us a little closer to that redemption? Shabbat Shalom, and may it be a liberating and joyous Pesach for all of us. Thanks for joining me. See you next time.